Welcome to the Catholic Couch, the official podcast of the Catholic Counseling Institute. I'm Amber Pilkington, Catholic therapist, wife, mother, and woman who, yes, has dated. We are so thankful today to have Dr. Mario here for our first collab.
Let's go.
Yes, our channel's a year old, but we haven't done collabs before. And I think we started with the best. Dr. Mario has a PhD and he lives in this lane that our channel is on, the intersection of theology and psychology. And he has had his own podcast, Always Hope podcast. He's had on Father Josh Johnson, Jason Everett, Father Timothy Gallagher, Father Spitzer. So I cannot believe that you're here. So welcome to the Catholic Couch, Dr. Mario. Thanks for giving us an hour of your time.
Thanks, Amber, so much. It is a joy to be here with you and your audience. And thanks so much for having me on your show. It's going to be great. We'll have a great conversation today.
This is such a wonderful topic. Dr. Mario has two online courses. One's called Dating Well, and one is called Overcoming Stress and Anxiety, but he's really the Catholic dating guru. And following up on our last video, which a lot of you really liked when I looked at the difference between purity culture and theology of the body and dating and marriage, this is just a perfect time for Dr. Mario to come on. So Dr. Mario, can you tell us a little bit just about yourself and how you came to the world of Catholic counseling and then found your way to dating? Because you're not dating yourself.
No. I've been happily married for 23 years. My wife would be terribly disappointed if I was in the dating scene myself. So
Which means you mastered
it. Which means I've mastered something at least, right? Yeah. So all it really means is I got lucky because I met my wife at 20 and we were married at 22. And so how did I get into this world? Well, I had my conversion in college like many do. And then, as I said, I met my wife in college and we got married as soon as we graduated. We did 2 years of missionary work, at which point I thought, man, I need to go back. I need to get some therapy background. I need to go get a master's so that I can help people a little bit more than what I'm capable of doing. And so I went and got my degree in marriage and family counseling. This is like the early 2000s. So the theology of the body was just becoming a thing at that time. And so I was learning about the theology of the body, loved everything that was being taught about the church's vision with regards to marriage and sexuality. But I thought that what was lacking was a sort of practical application of that, or that sometimes people can look at this vision and get lost in the vision, or they can get overwhelmed by how big it actually is. And so what I found was that strong science gives the steps to help people actualize that vision within their lives. And so I found a beautiful harmony between what the church teaches and what science teaches regarding best practices, being able to wade through the scientific literature there. And so I've been practicing as a marriage therapist since 2005, I would say, is when I started seeing clients as an intern in graduate studies. And so then what brought me into this dating world was soon after COVID, I was listening to a number of conversations with my young adult clients, and I had a handful of them that kept kind of saying the same thing, and I kept repeating myself over and over again. And I was like, there's something here that I need to kind of just put down on paper. And then as I was thinking about those things that I was putting down on paper, I said, a lot of this actually is really good pre-marriage advice, so to speak, like pre-advice. And that how do you really establish from the get-go a healthy relationship built on strong patterns of communication, of love, of respect, of intimacy? You can establish those things at the ground level and then build on that into a relationship, because I'm sure you've seen, Amber, in your practice also, that so often when couples come to us in marriage counseling, there are patterns of interactions and habits that they have formed within their relationship that go back years. And so if we can start from the beginning and help them establish healthier patterns from the get-go, then that's going to help their marriages down the line. And so there's a saying in seminary formation and priestly formation that goes, as the seminarian, so goes the priest. And what that means is that you can't just expect that the grace of the ordination to go ahead and change the character of this person, okay? That who he is in the seminary is who he's going to be, at least as he's going to start off with in the priesthood. And I think the same lesson applies when it comes to dating and marriage. That so often young couples think that, if we just get married, the grace of the sacrament is going to change everything. And that pump brakes on that. As the dating couple, so goes the married couple. And so thinking of all those things, having these experiences in the clinical setting is what brought me to where I'm at now, which is helping navigate this crazy dating world that we live in. One that I'm an outsider looking in for sure, but looking at all the research, working with couples, coaching individuals, traveling the country, giving lectures on college campuses on this. I'm just trying to help people as best as possible to establish those right patterns that we've been speaking about. And so that's kind of what brought me to where I'm at today.
I'm so glad that you have done the work that you've done with dating. Now,
Yeah.
dating, and yes, I've seen the same things from my clients. In fact, a client was how I found out about you. They were like, I saw this wonderful guy, Dr.
Oh, right.
Mario,
Yeah.
and you got to connect with him, and he does all the attachment stuff too. And
Yeah.
so I think we're hearing a lot of the same stuff. And one of the things that I have seen is, sadly, a lot of young Catholic women, I work more with women, although I do see some men, that really want to be married and are really struggling to find someone. And I don't know if it's just anecdotal, or are you seeing this as well? And what do you think might be causing that?
Yeah, no, it's not anecdotal. I mean, all the studies are echoing exactly what people are experiencing, which is marriage rates are declining, age of first marriages are happening later, dating rates as a whole are down across the board. And so definitively, and there's a lot of reasons for this. Some of it is we can look at just the fragmentation of society. People move more than they ever have before. People don't stay in areas as much as they used to. The polarization online, people fall into echo chambers. And so we're seeing studies that show that folks who are Republican are less inclined to date people who are Democrat and vice versa. Like there's those polarizations impact dating. So when you think of that, it's like, okay, so we're more fragmented as a society. We're more polarized as a society. We have less social ties that kind of pull us together, religion, spirituality, those things that have always been the fabric that have kind of given us some sense of commonality and a communal nature to our society. Those things are gone. And so what could go wrong? Right? I mean, what could go wrong? Like, let's just let people date now. Okay. Well, what does that mean? And so it means exactly what you're experiencing with your clients is that it's harder to find people that you connect with. It's harder to find people, period. Everything feels like it's an uphill battle, and it's just not as easy as it used to be. And so, yeah, it's there, and we're trying what we can to help folks connect in better ways and more fulfilling ways as well.
And speaking to that, you talk about dating as discernment as well as a skill. And I was starting to think, maybe this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but dating hasn't always been part of how we met our spouses. And so there was a history of arranged marriages going way back. And then, coming towards our century or a couple centuries ago, there's this idea of choosing your spouse. So I think that may be a whole thing. But I'm also wondering, dating as a skill. Can you talk about that, about how that's developed and how that's different from dating as performance?
Oh, geez, great question. So I'd like to actually hear what your thoughts are, though, about what were you with regards to like the changes in marriage. Okay. Yeah. Let's get on your little. I see something's there. Something.
As humans have, or as we have progressed, and the church continues, the message doesn't change, but there's continued revelation. Just like theology of the body is not altogether different, but it's it's a revelation. My thought is we get closer and closer and closer to the revelation of Christ's love for the church, that it is a chosen love. So if you think of the four things that John Paul II talks about, the full, faithful, fruitful, free, that we see along history, those things kind of clicking into place as relationships progress. But that's just my at first blush.
Oh, that's interesting. And so you're saying that because of that, moving away from arranged marriages into where it's a choice is a better symbol for marriage in that regard.
Because it incorporates the freedom.
It incorporates people's freedom. Yeah, I would get behind that. I mean, I have 4 boys. I don't know if you have girls same age, we can do this arranged marriage thing right now.
Yeah, I know, right?
On the podcast, just to make it easy for kids. But no, I would agree with that because where arranged marriages happen now is, I think, like in India, in certain cultures in East Asia, where there still seems to be that. And when it's done in that context, it's more communal in nature. So
Mhm.
marriage isn't viewed as an individual enterprise as much as it's part of the community. And coincidentally, like, or I don't know, coincidentally, ironically, whatever, divorce rates in arranged marriages today is like
They're low.
10%, very low,
Hmm.
very, very
Yes.
low, right?
Hmm.
So whatever the cultural context is, I get it. But in American, I would agree with what you're saying, that there's a sense that we have to choose the other person.
Right.
And that brings a whole host of questions with regards to, do we talk about a soulmate? Do we talk about what does God have planned for us in our life? And so it, this is why I view marriage, dating, excuse me, as an act of discernment.
Hmm.
Because as a young person is growing up and trying to decide, okay, God, what is my vocation? At some point, that question has to stop being an abstract notion. And at some point, it becomes something concrete where it's like, well, do I feel like I'm called to celibacy or feel like I'm called to marriage? Okay, well, if I feel called to marriage, okay, how do we actualize that? We'll have to start dating. I have to start meeting people. I have to start being able to learn what it is that I'm looking for, know how to be respectful, those things. But then in the process of my day-to-day life and the circumstances that God uses, he's going to reveal his plan and his will for my life. And so then as you're dating casually, and then at some point, maybe one of those moves into a seriously more serious committed relationship. Um, at that point, the question no longer is, am I discerning marriage in the abstract notion? It's, am I discerning marriage with this person particularly?
Hmm.
So the way I view discernment is God uses the circumstances of our lives. It's very incarnational. Like God came in a particular time. Jesus came in a particular moment to particular people, to a particular circumstance, to speak a particular word. And he does that also in the context of our lives by showing that every moment in history, right, can be touched by his grace. So that's the discernment element of it. The skill building element is kind of what I've been hinting at, which is what I think we're seeing with young people today is that they're lacking just relational skills. They're lacking the capacity to be able to speak, to connect, because so much of the intermediary has been the digital devices, the texting, and so the rules are different. How we communicate's different. If you're dating somebody and it's serious, but then you've at some point in the relationship, this is what somebody just shared this with me last week. So this is why this example is coming up. You've shared your location with this, but then at some point said individual stopped wanting to share their location with you. What does that mean? Right? That's a type of communication that you and I didn't deal with, or I mean, I'm dating
Right.
myself.
Right.
I didn't deal with,
Mhm.
like when I was dating,
Yep.
my wife
And there's
25
all
years
these
ago,
new
like
rules,
all
like
these
how
new
many,
rules.
yeah, how many
Yeah,
days before
yeah,
you like back, and yeah.
yeah. What do you text? What's the difference between
Hmm.
text? How do you start a conversation on a dating app and then moving that towards getting the person, asking for the person's number to actually text them? And then there's stages. All of this are modes of communication that there's no precedent for. And it's because there's so many different modes of communication. Do you reach out on Instagram? Do you direct message? Because all of this is there, people feel very overwhelmed by it. And then we have to get back to meeting in person, having conversations in person, trusting people again in person, knowing how to banter, knowing how to carry a discussion, know how to ask good questions, knowing how to make eye contact, know how to have good body language, all of this stuff that's really, really important to put your best face forward when it comes to those early dates. Those are just skills. And so I work a lot with men, and men often feel overwhelmed. They often feel confused. They often feel insecure. They often feel afraid of being able to ask girls out because of rejection. And
Yeah.
what I tell guys across the board is that, listen, this is just skills. Okay. Let's not get in our head about this. If we can develop the right skills, then you're going to develop the right competencies. If you can develop the right competencies, then you're going to develop the right confidence. Like that's the way that this works.
I love that. One of the things I talk to a lot of women about, and I don't think girls carry or young ladies carry the same sort of fear about the rejection in the same
Mm-hmm.
way as men, but it's still kind of there. And we talk about how if you're called to marriage and this is a no, we could think of that as a crushing thing, and we could put that on our list of reasons why I'll never be loved, right? All of those lies that the devil gives
Mm-hmm.
us. Or we
Right.
could say, hey, we're one no closer to our yes. And
That's right.
so thinking about how we're going to do that. Um
Yeah. That's shifting the mindset, right? I mean, that's having the what does Carol Dweck call it? It's a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed
Yes.
mindset, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so if we have a fixed mindset when it comes to dating, then all we're doing is reinforcing all those negative scripts
Mm-hmm.
that we live by. And if we can just kind of put that aside a little bit and enter into this, and if it is discernment, um, then that means there's exploration. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that's the way to look at this in terms of not so much casual dating, but exploratory dating. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to explore. And why doesn't God make it easier? I used to say I don't know, but actually I do know now. What I've come to realize as I've gotten older is that this is all what's to some degree what's waiting for us on the other side. We speak about having the beatific vision, everything's going to make sense. Yes, everything's going to make sense, but what it also means is that we're going to have all of eternity to play in the grand adventure that is God's love. And for
Yes.
all of eternity, we're going to fully understand God, but not fully understand him at the same time. We're not going to be satisfied. The satisfaction of our desires happens, but there's also not a period at the end of the sentence. I mean, that's the tension of heaven. And so this side of heaven, what to play is to explore, is to adventure. And with the right parameters, we can view discernment in that context. And I think that's the way the spiritual life tends to work is God reveals himself and then he pulls back. And whenever he pulls back because he's inviting us to take another step forward. And then he pulls back again and take another step forward. And so there's that seeking that he's always inviting us to. And so we see all of that playing out in our spiritual lives, and people can talk about the 3 stages and all that other stuff for sure. But I want people to be able to see their dating life as part of the larger picture that God's doing with them. And it's not like my spiritual life's over here and my romantic life is over here. That's what the theology of the body has given to us. It's like, no, all of this
Integration.
is
Yes.
integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And so bring it all before the Lord. What happens after
Mm-hmm.
first date? What do we feel? What am I interested in? The crush of asking somebody out and she's saying no. God wants to be present in all of that.
And I think that can
Well,
be seen as a
yeah.
continual road too, right? So people that I dated before my husband, I think in many ways prepared me in different ways
Hmm.
because I learned different things about myself. I tell my daughters and my son, it's important to know just as much what you don't want as what you do. And so developing, having that all be a part of that journey and walking one another, but as you said, with healthy parameters. A person that I dated before my husband, when we were talking about those physical boundaries, I remember him saying very honorably, I want to, if I'm not the one, I want to be able to look at your husband one day and say I did right
Wow.
by
God
you.
bless him. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Good for
Yeah.
him.
And he
Wow.
has, we were not right together. It was a
Yeah.
difficult breakup, and he has a lovely family, and so do I. And so I think if we can take that example and say, in that relationship, I really felt like we were helping each other take a step forward, even though that wasn't what God wanted in terms of ultimate vocation for both of us. So,
It's a beautiful
yeah.
story. Thanks for sharing that, Amber. And I would agree in my circumstances too. I mean, I only had a couple girlfriends prior to marrying my wife. And in each of those, I mean, breakups happen. And even though we're in high school, still, we learn from it. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
we can be too quick to look at high school relationships and like scoff at it or something like that. But it's like, no. This is like a young person whose mind is developing, heart's developing. Something's happening here. And I know for me, I always took the time to reflect afterwards and say, okay, what could I have done differently? What did I learn from this? And I took those lessons from each of those relationships and applied it directly to my dating relationship with Kristen. And so most certainly, yeah, I think that's the right attitude.
So, to that end, what would you say to parents? Because a lot of the people here on the couch are Catholic parents. They're about
Hmm.
our age. Can you believe
Mm-hmm.
we're the parents now?
Yes,
And
gray hair shows. Yes. Yeah, all
and
the wrinkles, yes, all the battle scars are well deserved. Yes, yes. I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
21 and I don't want to be 21 anymore.
And a lot of us grew up, and the last video I did was looking at the difference between purity culture and theology of the body. I'll put a link somewhere
That's
here for
great.
y'all. But a lot of us grew up with purity culture.
Yeah,
And
I Kiss
even
Dating
in,
Goodbye is it's on
yes,
the shelf
I
back
read it.
there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I'm wondering what you say to Catholic parents who rightly want to protect their children's dignity and modesty and
Yeah.
chastity and purity, who say no dating till you're 25
Hmm.
or
Oh,
30, right? Or
yeah,
put
no,
like a
right.
specific line. How does a parent of high schoolers help our children navigate dating should they be interested? What are some of those conversations to be having?
Yeah, so I'll say something about I kiss dating goodbye first, and then in the effects that I've seen with couples in marriage, back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the patterns you establish early on, how that impacts downstream. A couple I was seeing for counseling commented how they had read that book and how it shaped them. They're at our age and how it shaped them in their early stages of their relationship, and how that rigidity around the topics of affection and sexuality impacted their marital intimacy. And it took them a while it took them a while to be able to figure that out. Now, of course, I'm sure your listeners know, but just for people to know that that book, Joshua Harris has pulled it. The publisher doesn't sell it anymore. He's apologized for it. He didn't intend it to hurt people the way that it did. He has since lost his faith. He's divorced now. I mean, so want to pray for Joshua Harris and wherever he is, now. But what I tell parents on this topic is, like, if the purity culture experiment was run in the Protestant churches in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was run.
Many of the Catholic youth groups as well.
And many of the Catholic youth groups as well. That's right. It did cross over into that. But the purity culture experiment was run and it failed. Okay. That's the piece that we have to know. It failed. It didn't work. It was overly rigid. And so we want to make sure that when we talk about questions related to chastity, related to sexuality, related to dating, that we're still holding the line in terms of what the church teaches. Of course, I'm not bending that in any way. But the difference, I think, in a way that we can communicate to our kids is that we want to be able to respect their freedoms, as you said. And we also want to be able to give kids the opportunities to exercise the virtues that we're trying to instill in them. So we can protect them, we can keep them home, we can say all the things, we can have all the filters as we should, we can survey whatever they watch. But if we're never giving kids the opportunities to actually exercise those lessons, then they're never going to develop the virtues, because the virtues aren't an intellectual exercise. The virtues are habituated kind of dispositions that we have towards what's good. And we have to be given opportunities to exercise them, which means that they're going to see pretty girls, again, from my context as a dad of all boys. How are they going to respond to that? All right. So what we do in our house is we don't allow our kids to date till they're 16. All right. And the reason that we say 16, and I get pushback on both sides of this. Some people who say that's too late and some people who say that's too early. Well, why 16? Well, they're old enough to drive. And usually 16 means they're going to be at some point they're a junior in high school. And so we've got a couple years of high school under their belt, and they're already starting to look towards the future now with college and trying to be able to establish kind of some thoughts about what the future is. If they're capable of thinking about the future, capable of trying to make some intelligent decisions, capable of being able to reflect on their heart, then they're capable of being able to engage in a romantic relationship. Why not earlier? Because I don't think that they're capable of those things. The other reason, and again, this is particular to our circumstances, we homeschool up to high school. And since it's a house full of boys, my boys don't have as much opportunities to make friends with girls until they get to college, until they get to high school. And I want to make sure that they know how to be able to filter through affection, attraction, just making good friends, being able to display that they can have good, healthy female relationships. Show me that. And then we can talk about what it means to turn some of those relationships into something romantic. So I say 16 because I would like at least a couple years for them to start dating a little bit while they're under the roof so we can talk about it. I can help them navigate those feelings. And I tell my boys, and again, I know this isn't everybody, but I do tell them, I say, listen, guys, you don't have to share anything with me, but I just want to remind you, I do have a PhD in this stuff. I do travel the country on this. So I may not be able.
Are your kids unimpressed as mine are?
No, my kids love it. They're great. Because I can't, a handyman, I can't tear down a wall, or I can't go shoot something and tell them how to skin it. Like I can't go fishing. Like those are,
I gotcha.
Those are conversations I can't do. But I tell them, I said, but I can tell you how to have a healthy relationship. That I can tell you. And so if you want me to be part of it, then I'm happy to. And so they do. We have great conversations about it. And so that's the piece that I want to encourage to parents is to say, have these discussions. And I think it's important to at least have a couple years where they're under your roof so that you can help them navigate that stuff. So there was I give one lecture to parents, and the mom was saying, and then after the fact, I had a conversation and she was like, so help me understand the 16 thing, because I'm a little nervous. I thought it was always 18, but why a couple years earlier? And as she was talking, she also then said, well, I have another daughter who's older, who's in college, but she's not dating. And why isn't she dating? And it's like, well, you can't have a message that says no, 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 and then all of a sudden just flip the switch and expect it to be yes, 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 yes. Again, skills that we can teach our kids in the right methods, with the right parameters, with the right structures to help them develop the right relationships moving forward. So I like the idea of a couple years where they're under my roof. I can kind of see, could still review the text messaging, still have conversations about things while still have some supervision over them before I launch them into the world when they're on their own.
I love that. And as Dr. Mara, the grace for parenting flows through the sacrament of marriage. And so I would say to parents out there, these are what work for Dr. Mara's family or what works for my family, but ultimately we trust what works for your family. So be praying with your spouse and with God. You are as unique as a family as each individual person. So I really, really love that. And to that end, about the flipping the switch, when I did a bunch of research on purity culture and how that translates into intimacy in marriage, that was part of what created some of those underlying problems, is that when you've been told no, 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 and suddenly it's a yes, it's really hard to kind of shift that. One of the examples that I gave in the video on purity culture and exploring or developing our virtues, this is the analogy I gave. I want to know what you think about it.
Okay.
If we think about the sexual urge like fire, it can do enormous good and enormous damage. But if we teach our children to fear fire, and then suddenly one day they're off on their own, and now they have to build a fire, it could be very dangerous. But if we teach our kids that they should be cautious around fire, and we teach them how to light a match, how to make sure that the campfire is put out well, how to roast marshmallows but not get too close, as an example of learning skills around the intensity of that so that they know what to do.
Yeah, I think that's right on. Because if not, you'll get burned, right? I mean, that's it in either context.
Absolutely.
And when you get out into the world, obviously, it's just all around, and you have to be able to navigate it. I mean, I work out regularly. I go to the gym, and I'm grateful my eyes don't work as well as they used to, because bless women, but just modesty is not a virtue that we extol anymore.
No,
and so even as a man, I'm married, I'm still a man. Obviously, I'm still going to notice attractive women. That's part of it. And how do I navigate that and recognize, okay, that's there, but it's not something to grasp over. And so similar when it comes to teaching that to my boys is, okay, she's attractive. Or even if you're in a relationship and maybe struggle a little bit with some of those things, it's like, okay, like you're designed to be attracted to attractive things. That's something I say often.
Part of the design, it's not a flaw.
Exactly. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with you for it. And especially even when it comes in the context of a committed relationship, you're sharing your heart with this person. You're sharing your life with this person. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit harder sometimes. And I'm more okay with the fact that at least you're trying to establish boundaries with somebody that you're committed to and wanting to navigate a committed relationship with, rather than just random hookups and one night stand type of things. Again, I want to be clear. My boys know where the line is, and we're very clear about waiting for marriage. And I don't want to give any impression that I'm not clear about that, and that we're establishing those lines with our kids. But we also want them to know, as you kind of articulated, that there's an urge that's there. And again, I can only speak to boys because that's all I'm raising. And I know that those testosterone levels are increasing. There's a 400% increase of T levels from the time that they're 11 to the time that they're 15. And it keeps going up until 25 is when I think peak testosterone is for men. And so it's growing, right? So we have to be able to use that. There's nothing. Again, that's not a bug. That's a feature. That's part of how God made us as men.
Right.
And so how do we channel that energy? How do we use it appropriately? Where do we direct it? What are we stoking by what I'm looking at online? How do I navigate the landscape of things? All of that is part of our duty. And again, as I said, this is all part of helping them to develop the virtues that we're trying to instill in them: chastity, temperance, fortitude, wisdom. These are all virtues that we're trying to imbibe in our own lives and that we're trying to instill in theirs. And I think these are great opportunities to be able to do it without shaming them, without condemning them, but just trying to work with them to help them to continue to be the best versions that they can be of themselves.
And to that end, as you said, so goes the couple, so goes the marriage. You've been
Yeah.
married for 20 years. I've been married for 17. We
Hmm.
both know that in marriage, it's not as if you suddenly don't have to be temperate with those
Oh, right.
desires. There's
Right.
plenty of times in marriage where it's a no-go for any number of loving reasons.
Hmm.
And if couples don't know how to say I love you in many, many ways, the relationship can start feeling insecure around those times. And so it's a beautiful gift. But what I like to say is it gives you a much broader language of how to say, I love you with your body, which I think can start as little as 2 and 3 years old. Obviously, not
Hmm.
sexually, but
Yeah.
how do we love with our bodies? Can we help pick up toys? Even if you
Right.
didn't take them out, that's a way of loving with your body. And so I think that's kind of how we start teaching these. So it's not a talk, it's this
Yes. Yes.
continual
Yeah.
understanding of what the body is for.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who thinks that marriage is just going to be like a sex free for all is incredibly disappointed on the honeymoon. It's like, no, you
Absolutely.
actually have to pack clothes. You're going to do something other than be in the bedroom the whole time. Like that's not how this works, people. All right. And you're right in that there's so many different ways of being able to communicate what we do with our body, how we use it for good, in communicating that and teaching that to our children across the board. And that's an important lesson for couples. So even if folks who are listening that are parents and now maybe they're reflecting a little bit on their own marriage or relationship right now, one of the things I tell couples when I'm doing my marriage seminars is that every couple should have a healthy degree of non-sexual physical contact. It is the
Absolutely.
only time that you kiss an invitation for sex, or can you
Mm-hmm.
hold a hand without it leading to
Mm-hmm.
the bedroom? Can you snuggle on the couch watching a program together
Or
without
a
it
hand
leading
on
to
the
the bedroom? I mean,
shoulder,
a
just
hand on the
look
shoulder,
at
any of it.
you.
It's
Absolutely.
it's important to be able to have just a healthy display of non-sexual
Mm-hmm.
physical contact so that there isn't pressure every time that
Mm-hmm.
a kiss is offered, or that there isn't
Right.
a reading of it's like, well, what does he mean by
What does it
this?
mean? Yeah.
Type. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So speaks to what you
Dr.
said.
Murray, I was wondering if we could segue a bit to this idea of perfectionism in dating. One of the things I reflected on is in purity culture, which was sort of incorporated into my youth group, we had this sort of idea of write down a list of everything that you want in your future spouse. And I think having standards is a good thing. We talk
Hmm.
about there's certain things that if you're too far apart on important beliefs or foundational beliefs or what marriage is even about or for, that can be a problem. But one of the implicit, I think, promises of purity culture is stay pure and God
Hmm.
will give you someone that has your whole list and is equally as quote pure, which feels a little transactional.
Feels a
And
little
so
prosperity gospel is
a
what it
little
feels
bit,
like.
yeah.
Yeah.
Prosperity gospel of marriage is what I call it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I wonder what you think about this and how that maybe relates to how we, or not we, but people who are dating set their filters
Hmm.
on a dating app, especially if it's a Catholic dating app.
Sure. Sure. That's a great question. So I want to say something actually to that transactional element that you just brought up, and then we can shift into the
Sure.
perfectionism. I think all of us at some point we get into our 30s, maybe early 40s, and we realize not everything quite happened the way that I expected it to. And for those of us who are practicing our faith and have been committed to our faith since our teenage years or young adult years, we start looking at the thing and we're like, does this add up? Is this, I thought, not that I thought there was a quid pro quo, but maybe in the back of my mind, I thought that there was a little bit. Like, I'm going to do what
Mm-hmm.
you want to do. This, I'm doing the right things here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing all the things you're asking me to do. And then yeah, I thought I'm supposed
Life's gonna
to
work
get,
out.
life's going to work out. And doesn't happen often. like, and so it challenges our desires. It challenges our notions of success. It challenges our expectations surrounding faith. It challenges all those things. And I think we need to be honest about that, because sometimes in Catholic circles, we want to always communicate that it works out, it works out, it works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out.
That's
And,
right.
uh,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't work out, God's still at work. That's the whole point of the Job story, is that
Mm-hmm.
God's just telling Job, hey, keep your eyes on me, buddy. Look at everything I've created. I've created this whole vast universe, and I've created you too. And I have a plan. And so commit to this.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be honest with people that there are best practices. And I think that's the better way of kind of speaking about this, is that there are
Mm-hmm.
best practices that we can talk about. But when it comes to relationships and dating, there aren't always guarantees.
And it
because you
takes
could do
two
all the right
people.
things because it takes two people. Exactly. That's right. It's not just a solo entrepreneurial career objective. It's not just investing your money in the right 401k, right mutual funds type of thing. Like there's and even those things, obviously you don't have a control over the economy, whatever. But I'm saying
Right, right.
with people, there's a whole nother person there that has to discern this thing
Mhm.
with you
Mhm.
at the same time. So I think it's important for people to know that. But the question that you're asking is right on. So what I do in dating wells, I do ask people to think through 10 qualities that they're looking for in a relationship. What is it that they want in a potential spouse? But then rather than just leaving it there, I do the secondary thing, which is, okay, now that you have your list, force rank it. All right. Force rank it. Now
Yes.
now
And
you
that's not
actually
to
have,
say there aren't some non-negotiables.
no, that's right.
And
Well,
there
that's what I'm
can
saying.
be.
Like you have to force rank what's one, two, and three,
Mhm.
which is going to force you to think through what are the non-negotiables. And so you establish what those non-negotiables are. And those are questions of compatibility, for sure, values, shared direction of life, shared understanding of what marriage is, some of those things we want. Now, some of that, though, unfortunately, even in Catholic context, if I can get a little too rigid, if we start getting into, well,
How
am I
many
only going to
children do
date
you want?
somebody? How many children do you want, right? Or am I only going to date somebody who goes to the traditional Latin Mass? Or am I not going to date somebody whoever goes to the traditional Latin Mass? I mean, we're seeing some of that polarization happening even within Catholic ranks that we need to be a little bit cautious with, because we don't want to then crystallize those things and view them as non-negotiables when maybe they're not quite non-negotiables. It's not the same thing as pursuing somebody who's desiring chastity, but may also want to have a career as a woman, right? Those things are okay. So
And I have
we
to
want to,
say, not to interrupt, but when I say how
yeah,
many
yeah,
children do you want, I'm not saying to our audience that children are bad at all. Openness to life, absolutely all the beauties. What I'm saying is there's a certain prescriptiveness to I want one versus I want 14 that
right.
doesn't leave room for God to help us decide each month through prayer with openness. So just so that's not misunderstood. So sorry, go ahead.
Correct. No, I'm with you. I mean, I've heard people that's the opener for them on a dating app. Is how many children do you want? And it's like, that's not a good opener, buddy. I'll just tell you right now, it's not a good opener.
Stick with the
it's a
dad
little,
joke. It goes better.
yeah, exactly. It's a little too forward. Exactly. Stick with something humorous. So what do we do? How do we find that balance? Well, have your list. We need a list. We need some parameters. But when you actually start meeting people and interacting with people, the real person in front of you and all their quirks and all their idiosyncrasies and the fullness of their personality, the full color of who they are is going to come into view. And you're going to have to sift through your preconceived notions and start asking hard questions. Am I going to discern this person that's in front of me? Or am I going to and let go of maybe, again, not the non-negotiables, but let go of maybe 4, 5, and 6. Maybe I thought I needed somebody who was 6 foot, but this guy's 5'9".
Yeah.
Maybe I needed a woman who looked a certain way. I thought blondes was it, but she's a brunette, something of that nature, or a redhead or whatever. Letting go of some of those more superficial expectations that we hold on to, and then allowing the fullness of the person that's in front of us to actually come into higher definition. And I think that's the key. So I would say for people who are single to maintain their list of non-negotiables for sure, but making sure that when they are dating somebody, that list is always being filtered. There was a woman that I was working with in her 40s, and she had a very strong list. And she met a guy who by the second date, like looked at her list, basically, not like literally, but he looked at her list and was like, okay, I can do that. And that shook her. She wasn't ready to meet somebody because the list at some point had become a stiff arm. It had become like a defense mechanism just to keep everybody kind of at bay. And when she started dating this person, I was like, oh, I actually have to start letting go. I got to let my guard down a little bit, because he actually isn't threatened by the boundaries that I want in this relationship. And so it's constant shifting because we're people and we're interacting with people. And it's again, the uniqueness and the unrepeatability of our heart and of the person's heart that we're dating that makes the relationship, something new. So.
Here's one thing I found about the list too, is I had like the non-negotiable list. So there was someone that I dated that checked all the boxes, but it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
We were not really compatible personality wise. We had kind of
Mm-hmm.
different conflict styles. Anyways, some of the other things just didn't seem to be working, but on paper, it seemed to work. So I
Right.
think that's another side of the list is you really have to make sure, like, when you're on a road trip and you get a flat, like, are you
Is
going
this
to
person
feel
somebody who's
compatible?
gonna?
Right,
Yeah. This
exactly.
person even
So,
know what they're doing.
right.
Well,
And
that
so,
is, and that's one of the dangers just with dating apps is because we take our list and we think the easy way to do it is just take our list, plug it into the algorithm, and let the AI of Catholic Match or whatever bring back results, and somehow that's what's going to increase potential mates, and not always, right? Not always, because what we may realize, as you said, is that there can be compatibility on values, on religion, on politics, but not on personality or conflict resolution styles or discernment in how we make decisions. There can be vastly different ways that we handle those things. And so that's stuff that's important. And you have to be able to know that because there can be a high degree of compatibility with regards to values and things of that nature, but there might be a low chemistry, there might be a low attraction. And we need all of that to have a
right.
flourishing romantic relationship that leads into marriage.
Mm-hmm. One last question. I know that when we chatted before just to get to know each other, which I think is really interesting, we're kind of the generation before all of the phone stuff. So I reached out to you by email
Yeah.
and very shortly you said, let's jump on a call so we can talk to each other.
I'm
And
old
I
school. I'm
love
old
that. I
school. I'm
love
old
that.
school.
I absolutely love that. But that is one of, obviously it's not a dating thing, but that's one of the things I tell my clients is take it real life as soon as you can, or as close to real life as quickly as you can. So you
Right.
can really just start getting a feel of, do I like this person, or could I talk to this person for an hour on my podcast?
Mm-hmm.
It's a more full embodied
Mm-hmm.
experience. So,
Yeah.
but one area I want to go, I know when we talked briefly, I went to a Catholic college. I know that you didn't go to a Catholic college. One of the things that I see is, or I saw, I guess it's been a while, but there tended to be very strong filters around physical intimacy. But one of my observations was very quickly, I would see couples praying every night together, going to every single daily mass together, sharing, maybe oversharing, emotional, and almost to compensate for the physical intimacy that was not there. And I wonder if you could say something about this idea of spiritual modesty and appropriate discernment.
Yeah, that is a great, great question because we want to have, we said, parameters in place when it comes to physical intimacy, especially pre-marriage, of course, and then even as we're moving in a relationship, for sure, we want to have all of that. But I hear what you're saying, which is that so often the narrative is, as long as you don't have sex, then everything else is on the table. And how does that translate? So do we go too far too quick, not in the sexual context, but in an emotional or a spiritual context? And that is a great question because I do think that we can err in that. And so how do we help people find the right parameters surrounding that as well? Again, temperance, prudence, wisdom, right? Just taking it slow. Let people earn your trust. That's it. Let them earn your trust. At some point, if the relationship's going well, you're sitting next to each other at daily mass and you're praying every night for sure. And your prayers become more intimate in the sense that you're interceding for each other. You know each other's story. You know how to be able to pray for each other, and you're listening and you're bringing that to prayer for sure. That's beautiful. But early on, it takes a little bit for you to trust this person. It takes a little bit for you to be able to know who they are. That doesn't mean that in a first date, you can't start the date with 15 minutes of adoration. I think that's beautiful. Silence together, praying rosary or something of that nature. Perfectly fine. That's appropriate before you go out on your date, having some time together before the Lord, before the Blessed Sacrament. But it doesn't mean that there has to be pressure to share everything right out of the gates. Because of the restrictions with regards to sexual intimacy in those harsh lines that you spoke about earlier, that causes an increase in emotional or spiritual intimacy? I don't know. That's a great question to ask, but I don't know. I don't know if that's also just a product even now of, like we said, lack of communication, lack of clarity about boundaries, not really knowing what parameters are in that regard. So in dating well, that's part of the reason why in dating well, I go through all the hot button topics and knowing when to talk about what, when to bring up things, just to kind of give some people some parameters for them to know when we should be talking about this stuff. Because at some point you do need to talk about it all as you're discerning this relationship towards marriage.
And I love this idea of discerning in relationship, that you can't just, you have to do that with other people. When you're dating, you need to be talking with other people, but also with God, although
Mm-hmm.
not just on your own, and how that mirrors how the body of Christ works as well.
Yeah.
And that's how we discern so many things. I know that the last time that we talked, I was discerning which courses I wanted to make this year, and had a number of courses, and felt kind of overwhelmed because I could do Catholic ADHD parenting, dating, anxiety, there was grief. And as we talked, and I realized that you had this beautiful course on dating, it was okay, a part of the body already has that. Focus
Mm-hmm.
your energy somewhere else, which is when I started doing the Catholic ADHD parenting course that I'm working on now. And so just this idea of these same concepts transferring across the body of Christ in all kinds of different relationships. So, I guess to that end, can you tell us where we can find your course, a little bit more about it? If you're still doing the cohorts, you will not be seeing a dating course from me. You'll be seeing an ADHD parenting course. So, Dr. Mario, as the person in the body of Christ who has it, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at drmariosacasa.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. You'll learn all about dating well. You'll learn about my speaking engagements. You'll learn about my podcast, Always Hope, and the other things that I'm offering. But certainly just head on over to drmariosacasa.com. That would be the easiest way to learn more about dating well. So what is dating well? Dating well is the fruit of these conversations that we spoke about at the very beginning of our conversation today, that I tried floating it to some couple Catholic publishers, and then it just didn't feel like it was a right fit. So I turned it into an online course. At the time, I was working with a marriage ministry based out of New Orleans. I've since stopped working with them, but was able to take the course with me, which I was grateful for. And so what is it? It is 19 video lessons, 7 minutes to 17 minutes in length. It's not a cohort model. People can actually go through it at their own pace whenever they want. If they have questions, they can ask me certainly along the way, and to be able to answer those questions. But it's there to help people go from friendship, understand the stages of relationship, from friendship to dating, knowing how to navigate first dates, how to discern going on even a second date, and then how to discern when to actually take this thing to something serious, going into that committed dating phase, and then knowing when to talk about what. Like I said earlier, how to discern if the relationship's going well, what are green flags, what are yellow flags, how to navigate conflict, when to talk about pornography or sexual history. All of that are lessons that we discuss in the course. And then ultimately discerning how to know if you should continue in this relationship, break up, or if it's time to move towards engagement.
And
And
how to break
so
up in an honorable way. I saw
how to
that in
break
the
up in an
course.
honorable way. Yep,
Absolutely.
that's right. Yes, that's right. That's exactly right.
I love
Because
that you've done this. Go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
no, that's it. Because so often, even today, we just don't know how to do that. We have to learn what conversation should be had over text versus which conversation should be had in face to face. Like what should
Oh,
be had
yeah. In
in an
high school,
email.
I got a letter
Yeah.
in the mailbox. That was
Oh,
a good one.
wow. Oh my
But
gosh.
that was high school. That was high school. That wasn't me.
That's
That's how I got ghosted.
unbelievable. Unbelievable. Wow. Yeah. No, today you would get the text or ghosting.
Or
Nobody
the
likes ghosting.
non-text.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah. The
non-text.
three
Nobody,
dots.
nobody, nobody likes being ghosted. Nobody does. Nobody does. So, yeah.
And I love that you give the framework, because so much, as you said, the with media how it is today, with the digital age, we just don't have frameworks. I
Mhm.
even think some of the old frameworks don't work super well. I'm not a huge
Mhm.
fan of engagement asking. Do you know what I
So,
think this all
yeah.
speaks to, Dr. Mario? Not to interrupt, but how
Yeah, you're fine.
the realities of relationships and how they mirror Christ and the church and the grandness of them and the incompatibility, not incompatibility, inadequacy of language
Mm,
to really distill down. I guess that's when theology body says the
mhm,
bodies speak, that there are no
mhm.
more words at that point. And
Yeah.
so thinking about how we talk about things and how that shapes how we view things, I think is so important. So
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
appreciate that. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, thank you for coming on to the Catholic Couch. I know my listeners, I want to introduce all of them to your wonderful work.
Hmm.
I wanted to have you on because I think you have a lot of the same values of the Catholic Counseling Institute, which is to make Catholic counseling accessible, authentic, and affordable,
Hmm.
which are three things that are so needed. So I cannot thank you enough for taking this maiden voyage of collab, and I hope that we
Yeah.
can do it again.
We will. Absolutely. I'll have you on my side also here soon enough. So it would be
Would
great.
love to. All right.
Thanks, Amber. Bless you.
You too.